So by the way, if you thought that all of the censorship stuff was a little bit too on the nose, well, now we are in the realm of actual book burnings. So over the last 24 hours, Antifa demanded that Powell's Books in Portland shut down the store if they carried Andy Ngo's book on Antifa. So there are people in the mainstream media pushing for this. I mean, Sarah Zhang of the New York Times, she was pushing for Andy Ngo to be banned from Twitter. Why? What was his grave crime? He would go to these Antifa rallies. He would film the Antifa rallies. He'd put up the tape of the Antifa rallies, and then he would identify with the photos the people who had been arrested at the Antifa rallies. And when I say rallies, I mean riots. Okay, but now Antifa showed up at this Portland store called Powell's Books, and they demanded that the store stop selling unmasked inside Antifa's radical plan to destroy democracy. That's the book by Andy. The protest forced the store to close early. Powell's then announced it would not carry the book in its physical store, though it would still be available for purchase online. The book will not be on our store shelves. We will not promote it, said Powell's. That said, it will remain in our online catalog. We carry books that we find anywhere from simply distasteful or badly written to execrable, as well as those we treasure. We believe it is the work of bookselling to do so. So here are some Antifa protesters outside Powell's Books explaining that if they stopped the release of the book, that would be like stopping the release of Mein Kampf. Here's some of that footage.
Stop selling Andy Ngo's book.
You're on the
How can you have the
Stop
orange
selling
section?
Andy Ngo's book.
How can you
Stop
have the
selling Andy Ngo's book.
I don't care.
Stop selling Andy Ngo's book. 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 Stop selling Andy Ngo's book.
Yeah, nothing quite says anti-fascism like in fascist fashion, closing a bookstore because someone was writing about how terrible you are. By the way, it's absolute cowardice for Powell's to remove the book from the actual shelves, right? That in and of itself is absolute cowardice on an extraordinary level. I mean, it is a bookstore. If the idea here is that bookstores can only carry books that the left agrees with, just like it is the idea here that Facebook is only allowed to allow posts that Facebook agrees with, or Twitter is only allowed to allow posts that Twitter agrees with. And not only that, if you are an outlet that does not implement the same standards as Facebook or Twitter does with regard to its policing of content, that you can have your web service removed, the culture of free speech is dead. And then once the culture of free speech is dead, then it's just a question as to when the law changes, right? Because the law always follows the culture. The minute that the culture of free speech dies in America, it's really just the Supreme Court standing between the left and the destruction of actual legal free speech in the country. And we've had articles from people who are now going to be in the Biden administration talking openly about why we need to adopt European standards with regard to free speech, i.e. banning quote unquote hate speech, meaning stuff that the left doesn't like very often. Hate speech encompasses everything from actual horrible speech to things like saying that a transgender man is actually still a biological woman. Right? If it were not for the barrier of the First Amendment, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, there's no question the left would be pushing for this stuff incredibly, incredibly hard right now, on the basis of all of this is a danger, all of this is incitement. Everything is incitement. Remember, this argument is old. Okay, just because of what happened at the Capitol does not mean that this is a new argument. It's been an old argument. People were trying to shut down my speeches at places like Berkeley, requiring 600 police officers because they were suggesting that me standing in favor of free speech was actually fascism, right? Because words are violence. Words are violence. This is literally what they were chanting. They were chanting, speech is violence. The Punch a Nazi movement that started a few years ago was also completely reliant on the idea that all of your fellow citizens are Nazis if they disagree with you. That is the direction the culture is moving. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.